if you have good business fundamentals and you understand how to apply those and be disciplined and really think about stewardship rather than, how am I going to make a bunch of money? Then those things will come together as they need to. People think I'm safe because I'm in real estate. Maybe. But what you really need is a competent team with an excellent track record that is willing to be transparent about what those risks are. One of the challenges that we just don't see in any smaller direct investment opportunities in oil and gas is the reinvestment of cash flow to build compounding.
Hi everyone, my name is Akash Jain. I am super excited today to host my good friend Peter Snell. Peter is the CEO of Petrovibe. Peter, welcome.
Akash, man, so good to be here. Good to see your face as always. What's up?
Right, Peter. So I am looking for you to educate our audience on oil and gas, my favorite topic, one of the asset classes which I have invested in several times in the past and also with Petrovibe. So I love hosting you here. To get us going, talk to our audience a little bit about your background, how you got into oil and gas, what Petrovibe is doing these days.
Yeah, it sounds good. I wish people could be a mouse in the pocket of our conversations over the last 18 months. It's been a ride. And it's been awesome, man. Appreciate you having me on the show. And yeah, my background. So I'm actually a management consultant by trade. So I'm not a traditional oil and gas guy, if you will. And I had a friend who basically our daughters were playing volleyball. And we just got to talking, and I was essentially, as a management consultant, I was a business fixer, and he had talked to me about some challenges he was facing and wanted to get some help. And so we kept talking, and it turned into a thing, and I went to help him out and with his business, and we really did a lot of great things, had some really good milestones that we achieved together. And I liked it so much. I really fell in love with the business. I actually stopped pursuing other clients and stopped consulting altogether. And it led to leaving and actually starting Petrovibe. And I got the hunger for it once I got in. And I love fixing things. And one of the things that I realized when I got into the business, and this is, when you're a business fixer, you're an outsider, right, Akash? So, I mean, that as a consultant, you have time as an analyst in oil and gas. So you know the space better than most. And when you get into stuff, you just don't see things the same way as if you were in the business all the time. You have sort of a different context. You sort of anchor into your business fundamentals really well. And that makes for good application when you're trying to see problems and try to look for solutions, because most people just, when you're in it, it's very difficult to make change that way. And so I saw that not just where I was in that particular development company, but I actually saw it in the industry. And that's a big reason why I started Petrovibe, because I believed, and the evidence was overwhelming, that there was a severe deficiency in stewardship of capital. And that's not because people were necessarily bad. There are certainly bad actors in the space, but it's a hard business. Having said that, even though it's hard, there's a lot of things that if you have good business fundamentals and you understand how to apply those and be disciplined and really think about stewardship rather than, how am I going to make a bunch of money? Then those things will come together as they need to. And I saw that in the industry. And so that's why Petrovibe in large part was born, because where you see deficiency, there's opportunity, right? And I wanted to participate in that. I also wanted to demonstrate that, largely because I was told I couldn't do it. And if you want to know anything about me, just tell me no, or tell me that's impossible, or you can't do that. And granted, the bar is high in oil and gas. I mean, you know this, but we've actually found a way. And so we got a lot of work to do. There's no question. But anyway, that was a kind of a long answer to how I got in, but I love the business. The people are amazing. I wish I had time to talk about my partners, not just you. I'm talking about the guys that helped me actually run the business. It's really been fantastic, but hopefully that helps.
That's a great introduction, Peter. And obviously, you and I have taken some trips together to the field and whatnot, and I love it. And in my background, I used to be with Ernst and Young, and back in the day, did a lot of consulting with oil and gas companies. Hey, CVR Energy, Parker Drilling, Yates Petroleum, Marathon Oil. I've been involved in a lot of M&A with a lot of those kind of companies. Now, tell our viewers a little bit about the risks that you're facing. Again, everybody's wary of oil and gas, and I myself, before getting into it, used to be very, very wary of oil and gas. Why would anybody invest in oil and gas? this?
Yeah, so there is a profile that it can fit. It does provide diversification, but it's a lot different today than it was even 10 years ago. The overall fiscal discipline has improved, but before I kind of talk about some of the things that make it attractive, the risk is what you really asked about. And the risk is things that, unfortunately, one of the problems that we face in this niche is risks don't sell. So when you talk about the risk, and people will ask for it, and then you'll get, sort of surface answers like, well, commodity prices. You actually can hedge, and commodity prices, they can deliver some levels of risk, but there are ways to actually mitigate that. I would argue that's not your biggest risk, especially if you have fiscal discipline. If you're a good steward, you'll find a way through that. The real risks are what it comes down to a lot of investments. If you think about multifamily, a lot of times it comes down to the team. Now, people think I'm safe because I'm in real estate. Maybe. But what you really need is a competent team with an excellent track record that is willing to be transparent about what those risks are. For example, certainly you could say a little bit of commodity pricing, but when you really dig into it, the biggest risk is A, making sure that you have the right data that you can reduce your risk coming in and saying, just like if I were multifamily, if I'm in multifamily, I got to know that the demographics for the area, if I'm doing a new build, support it. Is there a manufacturer coming in that I can rely on to put people in those doors? Is there a refresh going on in that area that I can buy that asset and refurb the apartments and get new rents, bring rents up, maybe bring it up from 70% occupancy to 92 because the area is being redeveloped, things like that. You have to have an understanding of the data and how to use the data in order to go and mitigate the risk and then actually produce revenue from it. So knowing the data is one. And if you don't have really good, deep data that you really have good interpretation on, then your risk is going to be high because you are drilling a deep, dark hole deep in the earth. And there's a lot of things that can happen with that. That is still true. Another thing that's really important is making sure that you are, and this is huge, and there's a lot more risk we could talk about. We have pages of it in our PPM, to be honest. Most of that's mitigated these days in a way that can make people comfortable. But to me, the single greatest risk is programs that only offer 1, 2, or even 10 wells. Why is that a huge risk? Well, we talked about the data. Even if you have the data, you've still got a level of risk. But there's a wrinkle to this. If I have 1 or 2 wells, that's just not enough mitigation or diversification in locations where things can go wrong. I need to understand that the upside and the IRR is actually going to be good for a single well, but I need it to be good for many single wells. Well, even if I do that and I do that well with 10 wells, that's great. The problem is I'm still only going to get maybe a 1.5 or a 2x on my money over a 7 to 10 year period with a good well. And wells are still hard to get in some cases. What you need to do is have a project, and this is what all the big boys do, that includes reinvestment. So let me back up for a second and explain what I mean by that in a concept people can understand. Think about it in terms of multifamily again. I'm going to buy an asset under duress, and that asset is going to deliver me a value because I bought right, but also because I can invest back into it, raise those rates up, those rents up, and I can now start to cash flow at a better level. Plus, I've got the backstop of probably an appreciable return over time. You got appreciation, right, in the market. If I'm building a new building, there's a similar kind of approach to that. If I'm making this investment, am I going to be able to get that multiple over time? The point of reinvestment is this. Amazon did it. They still do it. Facebook does it. Exxon does it. All big companies that really want to scale, they reinvest cash flows as a matter of requirement. It's a part of their strategy. And one of the challenges that we just don't see in any smaller direct investment opportunities in oil and gas is the reinvestment of cash flow to build compounding. Not doing that is the greatest risk. There's too much that can go wrong. For example, in our current project that we're running, we actually built in, out of 50 wells, we built in 14 that are dry holes. I actually planned for dry holes, and we will have them. It will happen. But I'm not going to have 50 dry holes. I'm not even going to have the 14 I have most likely. That is a huge risk mitigator. Again, I kind of flipped that a little bit, but that was one of my greatest pain points as I learned the business was I saw that the only people that reinvest cash flow to build compounding and mitigate risk are the big boys. Well, you can do it at this level too. You just have to understand how the economics work. That is why Petrovibe exists in large part is to mitigate that one huge risk. And we don't face it like others do because we actually have already built in for the risk. We've already made reinvestment part of the strategy. I remember when you and I were talking about why Petrovibe, what's unique about it? Well, really three things that all go together. You got an IDC deduction that gives you a great tax deduction. The second thing is you have a real estate level risk profile because we actually have production that protects your equity. And then third is the reinvestment for compounding. Some oil deals have one of those things. Fewer have two of those things. None of them have all three in this way. And so those are ways to look at it. Whether you're looking at a Petrovibe deal or somebody else's deal, those are the things you need to be looking for because those are the real risks. Having 1, 2, 10 wells and you're only drilling with equity, biggest risk you can take.
Excellent answer there, Peter. Now, again, I think a lot of our investors are wary of oil and gas because they've heard the horror stories.
Sure.
And not only that, I think if you look at it, it's a little complicated. You have the upstream, the downstream, the midstream. People get confused about where they're investing. You have the land leases, you have the mineral rights, you have the producing wells, you have the exploration and the drilling of wells, and so on and so forth, right? And hey, I've been lucky that last couple of deals that I've invested over the last 5 7 years, I've invested in 4 deals so far, including Petrovibes. Hey, if you've been fortunate that hey, the first 2 deals that I ever invested in, that was 7 years ago, and they started returning money to me in year one itself, and they're still returning it, and they're expected to return money for about 20 plus years. And same thing with the deal that I did last year with a competitor of yours. But then earlier this year, late part of last year, we invested in Petrovibe, right? As Karma Energy, along with my partner Avishkar Sabrawal. So, hey, so we are partners with Petrovibe, full disclosure here. But help our viewers understand also what part of this whole ecosystem is Petrovibe playing in. There is a lot of different areas that people have deals and that deals can go south. And how are you risk mitigating? We talked about production, we talked about exploration. How are you mitigating everything that we just talked about?
That's a great question. And if you look at oil and gas, I mean, you framed it as far as like there's upstream, midstream, and downstream. And so upstream is basically exploration and production. Midstream is transportation and refining and those kinds of things. Downstream is actually, retail products, not just retail products, but products, petrochemical, transitioning those things and getting them out into practical uses. So lots of depth in each of those. I mean, you're talking, hundreds of billions, really trillions of dollars across the all three streams. We are in the exploration and production side, which is on the front end, right? And so Petrovibe is an oil and gas developer. We actually are focused on natural gas. So I'll talk about that in a second. But if you look broader at what's going on in the industry, a lot of people have opportunities to invest in oil and gas, but it's tricky because there's a lot of different things you could do. You could invest in certain funds, like traditional mutual funds that are energy focused. You could invest in stocks like Warren Buffett does. He's got a big play in Oxy. There are many ways to do more traditional investments. Those are more difficult to get larger returns. In this space, you've got opportunities to do direct investment in exploration and production in companies like Petrovibe. There are many other companies that do what we do. And so you have opportunities to say, I want to get in on the exploration and production side. I want to essentially get passive income out of the revenues of oil and gas hydrocarbons coming out of the ground. They're being sold to larger companies in the midstream that are then, processing and moving them into the downstream out into the uses. I don't know if you know this, Akash. I probably hit you with this a long time ago, but there are 6,000 everyday products that require oil and gas to exist. Our world would literally cease to exist if we stopped using it. And, people have different feelings about this stuff. I think everybody needs to go and try to have an objective mind and really consider the depth at which we are reliant on this. And I don't think that's all good. So I'm not sitting here saying, hey, it's all sorted out, but it is reality. And so we currently in the market are really in an energy crisis. Even though oil prices are soft right now, they're in the 60s. Natural gas prices are not soft. They found a new floor and it's pretty high. And that continues to improve, even with the trade war, which has been kind of an amazing test for that particular hydrocarbon, which I'd like to talk a little bit more about in a second. But you think about the market in general, that makes it tricky. Like, what do I invest in? What do I even want to be in this industry? There's nuclear, there's an urging nuclear focus from this administration, and you're going to see more development in that area. We already have. There's actually a small modular reactor going in live in the next, I think, 6 to 9 months out in Abilene, which is amazing. And that's a good thing, by the way, because we do not have enough supply. And I'm not just talking about oil and gas, I'm talking about energy. Population growth is huge. It's just not talked about. And that's one huge thing. But now we have the data center hungry, specifically AI. And if you want to know how hungry AI really is, and we're not talking about demand that grows, we're talking about demand that grows in a compounding way, meaning they're not prognosticating it correctly. It's growing on top of growth. Why? Because we're all using it. Another fun fact, it's, I wish I had one, a 16-ounce bottle of water is what it takes to cool the servers for one single prompt on ChatGPT. Now, you're saying, how does that relate to energy? Well, the point is you need a lot of energy to keep those things running and to keep them cool. The depth of energy demand isn't just about getting power there. It's about getting power there, keeping those things cool and keeping them running with a 99.9% uptime. And again, they're growing. And the thing that we need to understand is that the big companies understand the crisis we face and the fact that the grid isn't ready. Doesn't mean the demand's not coming, but it's the only indicator you need to look at is Facebook and Microsoft. Both of those organizations have in the last 6 months signed deals with nuclear providers to directly power their AI data centers. It's unbelievable levels of power that they'll never be able to get out of the grid for what they're thinking about doing. They're only two players, by the way. You got to understand there's a much broader market. They don't represent 80% of the market. You're talking about a big portion, but it's, 15% of the market. That is a huge driver of what's going on, which is why we love natural gas. That's why Petrovibe's strategic focus is natural gas. Because one thing everyone needs to understand is that the grid provides power to feed all this hungry demand, and the grid needs fuel. It doesn't just magically appear. Anything with a plug still requires a fuel source, and the number one fuel source for the grid is natural gas.
I love your passion, man. That passion is coming through. And while we're talking about this, right, I know we can talk about it for hours.
I know.
One thing that I want to talk about is hey, in your personal life, hey, how do you keep yourself grounded? What's your passion? If you were to go in a karaoke bar, what is the song that you would be singing?
Okay, that one, good left turn. Love this topic. I mean, the best way to describe me personally is a disciple of Jesus. You and I have had this conversation. We have partners who have different belief systems, but we wear mine on the sleeve anyway because I want people to know where my values come from and why I believe what I believe. Whether people choose to believe what they believe is their decision, but I want to make that available to people because it's the most important thing in my life. It's more important than what I'm doing. It's my why, and he is my why. And so I love him and he is my king. And the work that we do from my perspective is for him. Now, I can do that by way of being a good steward of other people's capital because ultimately I believe it's all his anyway. So if I'm doing that well for you, Akash, as my partner, whether you believe the same thing or not as me, you just have to believe that I believe what I believe and that serves you. And in that way, I can demonstrate to you and to other people that service really is, especially from the heart of Jesus, service like that really is bigger than me or a person and there's no more of a lightning rod topic than investing when it comes to money. And so putting those two things together, everybody's like, there's a lot of people like, I don't know about that. And I get it. That's where you got to be bold and go in where it matters. if I were in a karaoke bar, which is the real question you asked, it wouldn't go well at the karaoke bar probably, but there's a song by Casting Crowns called Only Jesus. The song's very simple, but he's talking about, I don't want to leave a legacy, only Jesus. And you can't take it with you, man. So I'm thinking about Jesus offers an eternal perspective and he offers eternal life. And that offer is something that I believe in. And when I think about it, I think about the things we're doing. If it honors him and he is glorified and it's in the right heart through him, through his Holy Spirit, then I can't go wrong. So I love that song and would freaking kill it at karaoke because it's my favorite song and I hear it all the time. And most people don't know about it. Now, my secular song that I love, because I sang this to my wife one time and this was a fun one, would be Hurt So Good by John Mellencamp. And I can still do that one.
What do your daughters think about that one, huh?
They have heard it. It has happened. I got my daughters are 23 and 20 now. So I've basically grown up. I've been married for 27 years. So it's been a sorority house, right? Even my dog's a girl. But I love it. And they think it's awesome. They're funny because, yeah, I'm dad. So like they see me as more a little crazy, but I'm still dad, right? I'm trying to be responsible. But it's fun to see their eyes light up when their dad, they're like, oh, dad he was a kid once and did fun things. And so my kids and I have an awesome relationship and I love them and they've seen it. So they know what it looks like. That lights me up. I love those girls. So 2 girls, I mean, it's crazy, dude. I honestly don't make any home decisions anymore. Like if it's not Jody, I got 2 grown women coming in and telling me how to dress, how to basically do anything. And I love it because I'm like, I don't want to make those decisions. I have decision fatigue. I don't know about you, Akash, but when you get home from work, don't you have decision fatigue? You're like, I don't want to make any decisions.
I had the pleasure of dining with Peter a few times. He helps us pray before we eat our food, and which is really, really good. Thank you, Peter, for doing that. Peter, hey, I think we've talked a lot about oil and gas today, and I want to give you the opportunity here to talk a little bit about that deal so that viewers can take advantage of what you're bringing to them at the right timing here.
Yeah, sure. I appreciate that, Akash. And look, I want to start by saying, the partnership has to make sense for someone, right? Like one of the things that you and I love about each other, really appreciate is we like spending time together. And we don't always have awesome conversations. Sometimes we're having, real partnership conversations, but we just keep coming back. And that's one of the things it's like having my brother from another mother, right? And not all partners can work like that, but I will tell you that it really has to make a people sense. And so people really need to feel like they want to be a part of something unique and different. And they're going to have to figure that out. That doesn't supersede the fact that this particular deal right now has really good economic fundamentals. And if you think about the granular level of this deal, Petrovibe 1 is a project. It's a natural gas development project. Again, there to really support the booming AI data center growth. We have a protect and scale strategy. So that's designed to deliver, we call it the MOIC formula, or multiple on invested capital, but this protect and scale is great. And here's the best part. Right now in the protect section, we already have production. We have already begun prepping for our drilling program. The production goes in the protect side. The drilling program goes in the scale side, but we actually are in the middle right now. We've made an acquisition. We're in the process of finishing the acquisition. So it's really timely. The equity we're raising right now this month is designed to help us get across the finish line. We've already secured the debt to acquire production, a really large scale of production, over 400 wells across 55,000 as what I'd call semi-contiguous acreage. Think of it like a chocolate chip cookie. We're leasing the chips. They're all in the same cookie, but they're not necessarily touching. And so there are wells inside of all those chocolate chips. They're producing really well risk mitigated, high EBITDA return profile. And what that acquisition is doing is giving us income that protects our equity. So as people come in, they'll be able to start participating in income in January. As we go along, the rest of this year, we'll continue raising equity towards the drilling side of the program. It's all built together, but this deal has a time limit on it where we're at right now. We need to get to a number. I'm happy to talk to anybody that wants to reach out, and you can talk to Akash or you can reach out to us directly, petrovibe.com/1. That's a way to do it. But the idea behind the project is you come in, we have 100K minimum. Right now we're trying to get people across the finish line. So we have a fractional add-on bonus unit, which is worth pretty good capital on a long-term forecast. But we have a 5.9 multiple forecasted for our target. That is on a 10-year project. And we have a lot of drilling to do over the next 7 years. This is a long-term play, but what you're going to see is your income starting in January is going to scale. And that's what's unique. We kind of touched on it earlier today, but this project, it scales your passive income because we're reinvesting capital and we're also distributing. There's a balance you can do there. And so, again, if folks are interested in getting into that, it's real estate level risk profile, which is really good. And the tax deduction is dynamite. We're looking at 71% as a conservative target for active income. So if you have W-2 or cap gains and you got a problem with that this year, don't pay the IRS. It's a total waste of money. Even if you were to invest in a different investment, you still have to pay that tax. Well, you don't here. So if you're ready to diversify and this window in June is good for you, I would encourage you to get in. And I had somebody ask me the other day, well, is this going to help you? And I'm like, well, sure, it'll help us, but I'm doing you a favor. Like, we know this strategy will work. We know the demand is there. We know the production is there. We know where to drill the new stuff. We need the capital to get indoor, and you're welcome.
This is amazing. And, hey, Peter, I do want to remind everybody, hey, this is a 506c fund that Peter runs. It is only for qualified, accredited investors. So, hey, obviously have a conversation with Peter. Let's see if you qualify or not. And if you are, it would be a great investment. I and my partner, Avishkar, we have invested in it. So looking forward to other people getting in on the bandwagon. Peter, this has been a phenomenal conversation. Any parting thoughts?
I would just say thanks. I love our conversations, brother. I love that we get to go out and eat. I love that you encourage me to pray for our meal, and I love that you participate in that. I love knowing who your family is, and I think your wife makes the best. And it was my first time. Biscuits and tea, and it's like cookies, though, and it was amazing. And so I love all of that. I love that we both like the same cars. I'm grateful that we get to spend time together, and I know I'm having a little bit of an Akash love fest, but this is what partnership can be like. And man, I'm just grateful that you invited me to your program and that there's some folks out there that will get a chance to hopefully learn some things out of this at the very least. I mean, it's not for everybody, but there's folks that will have opportunity from it. Great. Hopefully those that have different needs right now will just learn some new things about oil and gas. So
thank you, Peter. Thanks a lot. Thank you for being here. That's a wrap, guys. Thank you so much.